Talk. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Sports Talk here on the Sports Talk Media Network, and welcome into talking season for 2023. We are here in Nashville for day one of the SEC Media Days, running through Thursday. We had three coaches come through today, as well as the Commissioner, Greg Sankey, but we are not only here, we are at the Marriott in Charleston, where Matt Smith is there for the SEC. Coaches for Charity, coaches from all across the state are there, including Shane Beamer, Dabo Sweeney, and others. And Smitty's going to grab as many coaches as he can get to over the next, hour or so, because they'll be heading in for their program around 7. So Smitty has carte blanche to break in at any time with one of the coaches there. Here today, we heard from Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, Brian Kelly from LSU, and Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. And we'll bring you as much of that as we can here tonight. In most of our second hour, we want to dedicate as much as we can to the SC coaches for Charity and the live interviews there with Smitty as those coaches become available. And he'll let us know here momentarily how things stand there. Pat Daniels back in our Columbia studio. Chris Bergen is on the road. He's in the upstate tonight. He's making his way over to Clemson tomorrow, where Dabo Sweeney and his assistant coaches will visit with the media, sort of a mini media day for Clemson. Next week is the ACC media days in Charlotte, and we'll have that covered for you as well. So we got a bunch of stuff going on. We'll drop in some news notes for you. South Carolina missed on the target today. Malcolm Ziegler did commit to North Carolina and not South Carolina today. So they miss on that. The complete recruiting report coming your way a little bit later on. But let's go around the horn and let's go to Matt Smith in Charleston at the Marriott and kind of see how things are shaping up there as he prepares to talk to some of the college coaches who are in attendance. Good evening, Smitty.
Hey, everybody. We've got some real luminaries, some heavy hitters here at the South Carolina Coaches for Charity, and it's a great event every year. And of course, I've already spoken briefly with Shane Beamer, and we've had a few of your fans stop by, Phil. Now, one of them, we've had a few people ask, is Phil going to be here? And I've explained you're in Nashville now. And someone came in. There's an unpaid parking ticket from in front of Hall's Top House 2017. Don't know what the interest is on that. I'll help you clear it up. Obviously, that's part of my role here.
Thank you.
But seen Coach Beamer. Also, Dabo Sweeney's going to be in attendance. Buddy Pugh from South Carolina State. Clay Hendricks from Furman. Fisher DeBerry will be here. Sean Watson from Wofford, and Maurice Drayton from the Citadel, and all of the people that are here to support the Fisher Berry Foundation have started to file in. And it is, you've seen it, Phil. It is fascinating in person to get this many coaches together. It's such a great event. They continue to show up and return year after year. So it just lets you know how important, how close-knit our coaches are. They always have a great time and laugh together during their speeches. And it's kind of a rare moment of camaraderie because as you're seeing SEC coaches together, and I'll see ACC coaches together next week, but these are South Carolina coaches. These are, the coaches that may have been at the mid-major level their whole careers or assistants their whole careers, sitting right next, trading jabs with Shane Beamer and Dabo Sweeney. And it's a great event for that. And everybody gets real comfortable. And I'll give you as much background as I can from what I hear and see here.
All right. Very good. Again, you break in anytime you got a coach there. You let us know, and Pat will let us know, and then we'll come to you regardless of what we're doing. Bergie, you've been keeping an eye on everything else kind of going on today. There was no major news here today. People tried to make a couple of things out of some things the coaches were saying, but no major news today. I mean, Drinkwitz is happy. He's got a contract extension, and the legislature there has given him protection from the NCAA so he can work in the NIL space without any issues from the NCAA. And Fisher says he's on the hot seat even when he's 10-0 at Texas A&M. He knows he's on the hot seat there. Now, the one thing that they were trying to make a storyline out of was, is he going to call the plays, or is he not going to call the plays? And he would not answer that question. He said you'll just have to wait and see what happens when the season gets here. because he just wasn't going to tip his hand on what he was going to do from that standpoint. And then, Brian Kelly, he's sort of like, hey, y'all thought I was a fool, and y'all made fun of me going into last season, and I think I showed you by winning the West and playing in the SEC championship game. And they got a lot of people coming back, including an extremely talented quarterback. And they are going to be a threat once again in the SEC West, perhaps even, maybe, possibly voted the favorite. We shall see. Outside of that, what do you have?
Well, first off, I don't think anybody made fun of Brian Kelly and his coaching ability, Phil. It was his horrible Southern accent when he was trying to endear himself to the folks in Baton Rouge. That's what got everybody's ire up a little bit. It had nothing to do with his ability. I don't think anybody is going to question whether or not Brian Kelly can coach. A couple of things that came out today in the SEC Media Days I thought were interesting. First off, Vanderbilt extended the contract with Clark Lee. Premature in your mind, or is it Vanderbilt and they feel like they've got a guy who maybe has finally figured out a way to win there and they can't afford to lose him? 2-10 his first year, 5-7 this past year, beat Florida and Kentucky. I guess that's good enough to get you a contract extension, but just in year two, what was the rush? I didn't hear Clark Lee's name being bantied about at some of the other openings around, not just in the SEC, but around the country. But maybe Vanderbilt is starting to put some money into football. Who knows? I was kind of joking with my parents here when I stopped in today that Vanderbilt may have more money in the SEC than anybody else. We'll just never know. And maybe they're starting to spend some of that money with some of the things they're doing. And I thought Greg Sankey's talk about the name and likeness was interesting to listen to today. I called right up, and I was disappointed in him because, of course, we were chatting with Mike Morgan last week, and I asked Mike, is he the most powerful man in sports? And Mike's return was, well, he's certainly the most powerful man in college sports. And for a guy who has that much power to sit there and go basically begging to the Capitol and asking the United States Congress to try and step in and handle name, image, and likeness, I thought it was a little disappointing. The NCAA and its league members should be able to figure this out on their own without help from the federal government. Heck, they can't balance their own budget, much less try and handle name, image, and likeness. And I don't know how, if the feds are going to step in, I don't know how they could. What kind of legislation are you going to hand down to restrict kids in South Carolina and kids in Tennessee and Florida and California and North Dakota, wherever, that doesn't fly in the face of free open markets? I just don't see how in the world a federal legislation would work. They've got to find a way to handle this themselves. And see Greg Sankey running with his hands out to Washington, D.C. to try and beg for help, I just thought it was a little beneath him. And I'm not surprised because we have seen this coming. The league members are upset at the way this sort of dropped on them 2 years ago, but don't go to the feds. You need to figure this. This was a problem you brought in on yourself if you believe it's a problem.
Yeah.
Go find a way to fix it now.
Well, I hate to use this analogy, but what the heck? I mean, when it comes to college athletics, they are, when I say they, I'm not picking on anybody, an individual here, just in generalities. I mean, it's an organization. They're on drugs, and they have to be fed that drug, and that drug is money, and that drug is winning, and they can't trust one another, and it's always trying to outdo the next. So they need, his belief, I think Sankey's belief is they need some outside enforcement because they're not strong enough themselves to enforce themselves and to make this thing work. So there's some, what the coaches want is some equality across the board. They don't want a situation where you've got a Texas A&M or an Ohio State, the well-heeled, very well-heeled programs who are going to spend $15-20 million a year on a football team. And you know that the coach at Ohio State has said it's going to cost them, he's on record as saying it was going to cost, what, $13 million to put a championship football team together? Well, they don't want to hear that. But then if Ohio State's doing it, then what's Michigan doing? Okay? And if Michigan's doing it, then what's Texas doing? And if Texas is doing it, then what is Clemson going to be doing? And if Clemson's doing it, what's South Carolina going to be doing? So it's a copycat mentality where you got to keep up with the next guy, and nobody wants to be left behind. And there would be no end in sight to how you would control this within yourself. So they turn to the federal government and say, please come up with laws to help us to help us control ourselves. This never-ending desire to spend money and win, to make it fair across the board, to give everybody a chance. Let's have some legislation here. Maybe our guest with Smitty will have a better take on it than we do. He probably would. Smitty, take it away.
We do. We've got Shane Beamer here with us, head coach for the South Carolina Gamecocks. As I mentioned, one of the luminaries that comes to this great event, the South Carolina Coaches for Charity. And I leapt on him, honestly. I jumped on his back to see if he could come join us, Coach. So I'll apologize. You've been accosted, but we really appreciate spending a couple of minutes with us.
Absolutely. You didn't accost me. It was great to be here. Had to sign some footballs. I told you I'd come right back, and I did. My only question is, normally Phil comes to this thing, so I'm trying to figure out why Phil didn't make the drive down to Charleston to come see us tonight. But great to be on with you guys.
Well, he's in Nashville.
That makes sense. We got a CC Media Days going on. Sorry, Phil.
He's going to ambush you there.
Okay? I get to see them in 3 days. So, yeah, I can get y'all twice this week.
That's all right. Well, good. We'll cover all the ground here, Coach. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is it's really playing out as well. When you were hired, one of the things that was discussed was, you're a young, energetic guy. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with being an older coach, but tell us, how much energy does it take now with the roster turnover? Because of what you're dealing with, you are kind of a native to this NIL, transfer portal. It's not like when your dad was coaching at Virginia Tech. It's a different world, but you seem to have the energy. You seem to be thriving in this new environment.
Yeah, I'd be lying to you if I told you it didn't take a lot of energy. It does. It's just part of it. There's highs and lows, and you just kind of try and sit in there and weather the storm and realize that every day it's a new adventure. And don't lose sight of all the positives that are going on in college football right now as well. But certainly when you talk about transfer portal, NIL, and roster management, it's new things that nobody's ever dealt with in college athletics. So we're learning as we go, but fortunate that I got a lot of great people around me, and it makes it a lot of fun to do.
And one of the parts of that, Coach, is when you talk about the transfer portal, there's scouting. Juice Wells comes from out of nowhere, seemingly, right? Like, how do you know when you see film? How did you know when so many others didn't? Oh, he'll excel in the SEC. That's no problem. Nobody else seemed to know that, but you jumped on.
Yeah, it's hard. It really is, especially when it comes to the portal, because with the portal, you have such a smaller window to make decisions on guys. There's high school kids that we recruit for 3 years. Some of these portal guys, you got about 72 hours or less to decide if you want to bring them into your program or not. With Juice, you watched him play and you realize he had a great skill set. And then you really realize the competitive spirit that he has, watching him play, the way that he loves to compete. Hopefully you're recruiting, and whether it be the transfer portal or high school recruiting, you're developing relationships with high school coaches and people that know these guys, so you can find out as much as you can. But certainly, we were fortunate to be able to get Juice, and we've had a lot of transfers that have had a lot of success in our program, and it always starts with the high school recruiting. There's no doubt about it, but we have really had a good success rate with transfers we've brought in.
All right, Coach, you opened with North Carolina, Mack Brown. There's a lot of people I think who would draw comparisons to you and the start of his career. The energy, the way he's a bit of a CEO. I hope you take that as a compliment, not a dig. You're not a coordinator first. You're more of a CEO type. What do you see both in his program, that matchup, and then also when people mention that you're kind of like another Mack Brown? How do you take it?
I take it as a compliment. He's won conference championships and a national championship as well. And I've got a ton of respect for him. He and I were just out in Houston, Texas yesterday at an event. And